So in this video, I'm going to talk about a concept talking about the apocalypse or end of the world only because I'm hearing it from a lot of people. And I'm going to explain how they're wrong in a way about the apocalypse. So my roommate and the people that I have lived with in programs, the homeless people who are living on the streets, some of the people who don't want to have children, some of the politicians, also the movie makers. They talk about how the end of the world might come or stuff like that. Now, we're going to use my roommate's example. I've heard this from over 200 people in my lifetime that they think the end of the world is coming or there's some apocalypse happening or some horrible event is about to happen. And they're wrong in a way. And this is where I told my roommate. My roommate says he thinks that the end of the world is near. He thinks that we're going to be all dying very soon, instantly, or the end of the world will be some instant event or something like that. Excuse me for a moment. Bad kitty. Okay, so they think there'll be some event like a meteor hits and we're all annihilated at once or something like that is going to happen, or people talk about the food shortage, or there's a movie like called The Children of Men that talk about how infertility is happening really rampant in this country. There's more and more people in my generation being born or made infertile, so there'll be less children being born. There's people deciding not to have children, and they think that that's going to end the world, or maybe some flu virus like COVID's going to wipe everybody out, and everybody panics as the end of the world. And then I have to explain to them that their concept has a big flaw in it. And this is the example I used from my roommate. I said, when a meteor hit and got rid of the dinosaurs, you heard of that, right? Well, that's called an extinction event. That is what actually wipes out a large population and a large amount of animals and reptiles on the earth. Well, that's not like a meteor hits and everything dies in that week. It doesn't work like that, I explained to him. If a meteor hits in China today, what will first happen is a bunch of dust will kick up in the air. So the people in China might be annihilated quickly. But that's the only people that die in that first week or that first month or that first year. Only the people in China. So there's still millions of people around the world. So in that first year, just China gets eliminated, and the rest of the people just say, oh, those poor Chinese, that meteor wiped them all out. But we all are eventually going to suffer, and it could take 50 to 100 years to fully see the extent of that extinction. Because what happens is the sun gets blocked out. At that point, maybe for the next 10 years, crops don't come in. Okay, well, people start worrying about the crops. They eat less. They start trying to reserve food. They start trying to switch over to other food sources, like things that might grow without sunlight, like mushrooms or things like that. And during those first 10 years, some people die off because of starvation, and the food chain is broken down. But it takes quite 10 to 20 years for that food chain to fully break down. So the crops die, the fish die, the phytoplankton in the sea die, so the fish die, and then the cows and the pigs die and things like that. That takes a lot of time. It's not a quick process. So if a meteor was coming towards Earth and was going to hit China, everybody would panic and think that was the end of the world that year. Then the meteor hits and they don't see much change in America because it hits China and America seems fine. But then we have colder winters and people are freezing to death. You get more and more winters. Global warming makes a bunch of weather events because now that you've blocked out the sun, you have this global event. So that takes time too. People, try to get more and more clothing, but there's less and less cotton and animals to make clothing out of. So slowly people start to starve and freeze to death. Well, that takes 10 years. Well, once when the starvation gets really bad within those 10 years, then the governments try to get involved and they send the governments to make control. At that point, it takes another 10 years for the people to rise up and go against their government, because then the people working for the government get fed, and the people that the government's supposed to be protecting, they starve and freeze. Because, of course, if the government has the power and if they're keeping the peace, their soldiers or their police officers or their government officials are going to take up most of the food and resources. They come first, while the people come second. And that's a big problem, because then the people starve, die, they see their children, wives, brothers, whatever, and then they rise up and they say, no, we need equality. I'm dying and this guy's taking my food. So that takes another 10 years for us to reestablish a new government. So now we're 20 years in to this end of the world event. At this point, we fight the little people that are left. We fight against the government to take whatever resources are left. Maybe we win, maybe we lose, but within 10 years, that kills off a larger population. Then we're left with one unified population. Now we're at 30 years or so. At this point, the dust might be settling, the sun might be coming out, maybe it's getting warmer, maybe the crops are just coming back. At that point, maybe we tear each other apart or whatever, or maybe there isn't enough food left to support, so there's only a couple factions left of people. Well, that's a 30 years to get to that point. These extinctions or end of the world events do not happen like that. They're not quick. It's not like a meteor hits and everybody gets wiped out. It's not like a flu virus comes in and everybody gets wiped out. It is a long, arduous process to do an extinction. And what I'm seeing now looks like a 100-year extinction. It looks like our government, our officials have not properly protected us, and we're getting attacked by every different angle. I feel like the human race's extinction has already come. We're just in the middle of it, and we have 100 years of suffering left. We got chemicals in our water, we got chemicals in our food. People are getting all different types of cancer from these chemicals. We got plastics polluting our sea. We got animals and fish dying off at record highs. We got storms coming in. We got different types of weather events. We got lots of war and destruction starting to unfold again. We had a couple conflicts like Desert Storm, Vietnam, North Korea, stuff like that, but we haven't had a full breakdown of the world government like we're starting to see now. We're starting to see China wanting Taiwan, Russia wanting lands that NATO's getting involved with, like Ukraine. We're seeing America break down their chain. We're seeing Saudi Arabia and the Middle East wanting to sell their oil for euros, and then we're invading to stop them from selling the oil from euros. Not sure if you're aware of this, but when another country like France or Europe wants to buy oil, they first have to buy US dollars, and then they have to trade those US dollars in for oil. Well, that means we're the middleman. That means if any country wants to buy oil, they first have to buy our US dollars. Well, they don't want to do that anymore, and America is trying to bully them into keeping the old system. So that's causing conflicts right there. The whole world is breaking apart into different factions, and with technology getting involved, that can either save us or speed up this process. And what I'm seeing isn't no quick extinction, isn't the end of the world, no. If we all work together, love one another, and keep our governments accountable, and stop the greed and corruption of these corporations from putting chemicals into our water, dumping chemicals into our lands, putting stuff into our food that's toxic. Like, here's one that's actually been proven to be true. There are toxic metals in baby food that don't need to be in there. Children for hundreds and hundreds of years were living just fine on regular food. Bananas and peas put in a blender. You get a can of peas, you put it in a blender, you feed it to your child. Now we see a lot of these chemicals and things that don't belong in our food being put into our food, as well as we see more than ever diseases. And the pharmaceutical companies and doctors are worse than ever. Back before the 1970s, doctors were meant there to help you. Today, it's a different story. You have to be cautious. A lot of times, if you go to a doctor to get sleeping medication, let's say you're having problems sleeping, it used to be, okay, here's benzodiazepine, be careful with it. If we see you starting to become an addict, we'll have to take you off of it. But now they try to kick you over to a psychiatrist who has no concern of your physical health. And psychiatrists, they are really bad with these medications. They give you like 12 medications by the end. You start off with one medication like Seroquel, then you get depression or suicidal thoughts, so then they give you depression medication, then that makes the depression worse. Then you get heart palpitation and headaches, so then they give you a blood pressure medication and something for the headaches, and then you get in this what they call a pharmaceutical cycle or trap, and it's quite common in society. Well, these are becoming a big problem. Psychologists and psychiatrists are definitely out of control. Doing therapy is fantastic. Talking out your problems and facing your issues is fantastic. You should be doing that. You should talk through your problems. You should face whatever happened to you head on, and you need to move on from whatever happened to you. Somebody beat you. Somebody chopped your hands off. Somebody poured drugs down your throat. Somebody murdered your mother and father. Whatever it is, you have to process that by talking through it and admitting that it happened and then dealing with it. But these drugs are causing people to go into these deep holes that they never get themselves out of. I've seen it in multiple shelters and insane asylums. People have one issue like their mother beat them, and before they know it, they're on 12 medications and they can't hold a job. All because their mother beat them? No. It's all because they're all hung over on the morning on pills, and the afternoon they can't walk funny, and their judgment and their impulse control is affected by these heavy pharmaceuticals. And this is a big problem as well because some of these pharmaceuticals can cause serious side effects that are permanent. They're really problematic. So when we're being attacked by all these angles, we're being attacked by companies, putting lead in your paint or giving your children toys with lead on it like they did back in the day. Or maybe that we got chemicals being put into our water and then we find out years later that causes some type of permanent problems. Then we got more chemicals being put into our food that might cause permanent problems. And these things haven't been time tested. We got new products coming out every day that haven't been thoroughly tested or even cleared. It's just, okay, we can make a lot of money, we'll pay off somebody, and we'll put it on the market. We also got politicians who are invested in wartime. They're not quite straight that way. You got a politician who might be investing in a company like Raytheon that makes guidance systems for missiles. Well, if we need more missiles, then they make more money. And most politicians make most of their money in the stock market by investing in these weapon manufacturers or health appliances like different vaccines or stuff like that. So then when there's a health crisis or when there's a war or when there's a conflict, they profit off of that. So their decisions are based off of profit. That's a big problem too, because if somebody doesn't have to fight or give up their children, if somebody can make millions of dollars off of making a decision to go to war, they're more likely to make that decision. But then we have more and more conflicts, as well as we have all these other issues. We got trees dying, we got animals dying, the oceans being destroyed. I'm not sure if anybody's aware of Trash Island, but we literally have a whole country's worth, an island the size of just about any country, only made up of trash that's been thrown in the ocean. And this island will take thousands of years to decompose. We even have a new type of bacteria starting to eat this plastic. So we have evolution creating new and unusual animals to cope with all this plastic and destruction that we're providing. So when people talk about the end of the world is near, oh, I know, on 2012 it's gonna rain fire or whatever, I laugh at them only because we might already be in the middle of an extinction event. It might have started in 1970 and it might be end in 2170. We might be right in the middle of something. And that's the problem. When extinction events happen, it's not no quick process where people see it straight up. It's almost always 100-year, 200-year slow process. and we might be in the middle of it now. We're seeing more and more homeless people. We're seeing more and more of the rich take advantage of the poor. We're seeing a divide in American politics, and we're seeing a divide in American people. We're seeing more and more selfish behaviors. We're seeing a mental health crisis. We're seeing an addiction crisis. We're seeing a housing crisis. And that's just in America and alone. If you go over and look at China, they're treating their poor even worse. They're harvesting their poor's organs. They're having a lot of problems. I mean, countries all over the world are having lots of problems. Mexico doesn't have enough water to supply to their people, especially since we cut off the Colorado. The Colorado used to make it all the way to Mexico, so they had some fertile lands in the north. Ever since we cut off the Colorado, there is no water or fertile lands in the north. It's all in the middle of Mexico. In the middle of Mexico, you got the fertile lands. And one of the big problems is that the water coming from the Colorado mountains no longer reaches it there. Why doesn't it reach it? You might think it's because of global warming. No, it's because we built a city in the desert called Las Vegas, and we needed electricity to power Las Vegas. So what did we do? We dammed up the Colorado River, and now we have turbines that spin that creates electricity for Las Vegas, Nevada, different towns that are along the Colorado River. But when you dam a river, it doesn't make it all the way to the end anymore. You're making that river shorter. So by making the Colorado River shorter, now we're cutting off a water supply to Mexico. And not only that, we manipulated Mexico in many ways, so we have conflicts with other countries on our borders where we're taking advantage of one another. I mean, this is pretty similar to what we saw with the Nazi government. We saw their dollars fall out of fashion. We saw the inflation go nuts. We saw a rise of a population of people that had beliefs that were selfish and that they wanted more. That was the Nazi Party. And now as 100 years, we know it's bad, but let's say that the Republican Party became the party of doing, or the Democrat. Actually, the Democrats are even worse. The Democrats definitely have some problems, some big problems. So let's say that the Democrats start talking about how we need to give back a certain amount of the country and we need government control, and then the government starts poisoning our water or something like that to eliminate a certain type of race or something. Well, that would be no different, and we wouldn't see it coming, because yeah, we understand that Nazis are bad now, but when Nazis were first coming into power, they all thought that they were supporting themselves. They all thought that this was a government structure that would work. They didn't think that it was bad. And most of the Nazi party, 99% of the Nazis, did not have anything to do with wanting to kill Jews, blacks, or races. Most of the time, it was a government structure where they wanted full control of power, and they wanted a more efficient chain so their country could survive. They wanted a chain of goods and resources to come in, and they wanted the manufacture stuff to go out. Because at the time of World War II, Germany was a manufacturing hub. They did a lot of steel manufacturing. Actually, they had more steel plants and manufacturing in Germany at that time than any other country. Only America was second behind them. So Germany was a manufacturing hub. They had millions of people working long hours, and then they couldn't even get a loaf of bread with a wheelbarrow of money. So they voted in this organization, this government organization called the Nazi Party, that was supposed to be representing the people. They were supposed to represent the needs of their country. The only problem is they got too much power and they got out of control. And then one person's beliefs ended up overriding everybody else's beliefs. So does that seem familiar to what we're seeing in America today? Does it seem like the corporations' beliefs are overriding the greater good of the population? Oh, absolutely. How many people would like their aspirin and their pharmaceuticals to be cheaper? I think everybody would say yes. Okay, then why don't we just do that? The pharmaceutical companies can easily flip a profit by giving half price. The same medications you get in America are sold in Canada for way cheaper and these manufacturing hubs still make a profit. But see, price, like for instance, if a pharmaceutical company makes a pill for $1, it costs them $1 to manufacture. Okay? The whole process costs $1 to get it on the shelf for you to buy it. You would think that they might charge $5 and make $4 profit, but no. They charge something like $20 because then they have a higher profit margin. Because that's what drives America. Profits, profits, profits. That's what drives America. Well, that means that the people that have control of the profits and have control of the money are going to decide what happens in America. And that's the same problem in Nazi Germany. A certain group of people that had control of the money, they had control of the manufacturing hubs, and they had control of the military, decided what all the people was best for all the people. And what they decided was best was invading other countries and killing off a whole line of Jewish and other people. That's because of their belief system, but it was a part of the government that ended up deciding it. Now, our corporations in America have control over our government. They do, absolutely. Also, the corporations in America also have control over our military. You might not see it directly, but I'll give you an example. Would you say that Amazon has control over the CIA? Most people in this video would probably go, no, they don't. Well, actually, they do. You might not realize this. If you do the research, you can track down the forms and the documents that go with it. But the CIA stores most of their online security and online files with Amazon's cloud. Amazon has the biggest, most powerful cloud in America or in the world. Amazon has a giant building, and they built a second one too, that basically is millions of computers all in a basement put together. Well, the CIA doesn't have their own base to really do this. They have some small server rooms, but they needed to rent it out. So they made an agreement with Amazon to have Amazon would have full control over this cloud, and then the CIA would use it. So, if Amazon didn't like our government standing up to them, all they would have to do is cut off their cloud server. And then the CIA might have problems with what's going on. People might die or get hurt. Well, that's giving power to a corporation over a government entity. We have the CIA who is borrowing a server, cloud server, from Amazon. But if Amazon then doesn't like their decisions, they can cut off that service. It's a necessity. They need that with today's online economy, with today's online industry. Today, with people shutting down pipelines in Texas through a computer, the CIA needs to have the strongest servers possible. So they rent it or use it off of Amazon server. Well, that's a big problem. When our companies like Amazon, when our companies like the pharmaceutical industries, when our companies like Raytheon have power over our government, then we cannot expect the people to have a voice, because these companies are whose voice is going to be heard. If Amazon wants something, they're going to get it because they have power over the CIA. If the pharmaceutical companies want something, they're already invested millions of dollars, so they're going to get it. When somebody wants to invest money with Raytheon into or into gun manufacturers or something like that, and they're a big politician, what's going to happen then? They're going to vote for more destructive means. If there's a vote to go to war, they're going to see profits in it, as well as if they're getting lobbyists coming in who want to go to war, that's more voices telling us to do this. Meanwhile, our children and the people are the ones who suffer. These rich people don't go to the front lines. Yeah, they go to war. But you really think that people like George W. Bush's, you think that when he got sent over the Desert Storm, he was right on the front lines, gun in hand, shooting down Iraqis with a gun shooting back to him, dodging bullets? Absolutely not. He's on an aircraft carrier having a mess at the mess hall. These wealthy individuals' children are not sent to the front lines. It's the African Americans, it's the poor people. We get sent to the most dangerous parts of the war because we're disposable. So the people that profit off of war are the ones who decide to go to war. The pharmaceutical companies that profit off of us getting sick are the ones trying to make us sick. Actually, there's a whole nother documents and a whole lot of videos that explain that the pharmaceutical companies are pushing chemicals into our food and they're making money off of that. So they're producing chemicals and different additives that go into our food that have been known to cause health problems. And then these same people are profiting off trying to give us medicines to cure our health. So first they make us sick and they profit off of making us sick, and then they try to profit off of making us better. So these pharmaceutical companies have a double whammy there. First, they can make money by selling these things to different food departments or different industries, and then we get sick, and then they can sell us, the people, directly some type of cure or medicine or something like that. And without having free health care, it's the people that have to pay the cost for this. So keep in mind, when I say end of the world or apocalypse, I don't think that that's exactly what's going on. I think that that takes hundreds of years to fully unfold. Meanwhile, when other people say apocalypse or end of the world, they're thinking about a meteor coming down like you see in the movies. Everything becomes instant panic. Everybody starts killing each other. And within 2 weeks, the whole world falls apart. That's not the truth. When there's full destruction, when there's full anarchy, it takes years and years and years for the destruction to unfold. And we're probably only 50 years in. We probably still have a whole nother 100 years before we see the full extent of what we're doing today. Because there's lots of well-known destruction going on. And then there are medicines out there that are made illegal because we'll wake up to this. We will. There are lots of cures or medicines out there that aren't being looked into. Why? Because one of the side effects is you might wake up to what's going on. You might not want to kill some guy you never met in another country for a belief that you don't understand. Because that's usually what they tell you to do. They want you to do what they tell you to do if it's right or wrong. And I see a lot of this in society. As well as, I gotta say, I learned how to identify right from wrong at an early age, and I already dealt with that. I had a mother telling me to do awful things. Like, for instance, my mother told me to give pharmaceuticals, over-the-counter pharmaceuticals, to another kid's child. The kid was crying in another room. I go up to my mother. I say, what do I do? What do I do? Do I call their mother? Do I give them a hug? Do I give them one of those mood stabilizers you give me? And then she told me, yeah, give them a mood stabilizer and give them one of those pills. Now, luckily, at the time, the child refused to take the mood stabilizer. But a year or two later, I was reflecting on that, and I came to the conclusion that that's totally bizarre and wrong. You never, ever, ever give another child medication without consulting their parents. But see, I was only 10 years old. So I was learning lessons about right and wrong with my own judgment at 10 years old. And the advice I was given by my government, by the doctors, by my mother, I had to fully reflect on. If I just believed people, to this day, I wouldn't know what's right and what's wrong. Like, for instance, if your military gives you a gun and tells you to shoot somebody in another country, is that right or wrong? Well, it depends. If they don't tell you the information of why you're doing it, then it's absolutely wrong. And that's the thing. Your governments do not inform you about what you're properly fighting for. They keep it very confusing. They use misinformation, and they try to flip your mind around to simple phrases or misleading phrases just to get you to do it. And that is absolutely wrong. You should not be hurting anybody for any reason. If you're saving lives and you're making a big difference, then yes, you should do it. But if you're picking up a gun and shooting somebody that you never met before, that might just be defending his family, then that's absolutely wrong. If you get dropped from a plane and you parachute into somebody else's country, and then somebody comes out with a gun over their shoulder, and then you shoot them, you don't know why you shot them, and you don't know why he was at that doorway. But let's say that this person was inside with his children. There was his son and his daughter. They were sitting on a carpet just eating their breakfast. They hear a plane and missiles go by. They hear ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. And their government is telling them, please defend your families. Please defend your families. Well, then that Iraqi or Irani or that Chinese citizen is going to pick up their gun, put it on their shoulder, and then walk out of their house to see what the destruction is before somebody kills their children. And then you, an American who just got dropped out of a plane, you're standing there in the middle of the road. You see this guy come out of the doorway, and then boom, 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 you just killed this guy. Okay, well, you dropped into his country. You put his children at risk. You're dropping buildings and destroying it. And it's your country who's making up lies saying that these people are out to get you. Oh, all these people are out to get Americans. Oh, all these people hate America. Oh, they sent a plane into the Twin Towers because they hate America. No, that is not why. What it is they're tired of America killing their people. Before we ever had 9/11, we were bombing and causing destruction around the world. Now, here's another example. You think of Pearl Harbor, right? What did your country, what did America tell you Pearl Harbor was about? I'll give you a pause to think about that. So Pearl Harbor, that is where Japan bombed Hawaii. Okay? Think about that for a second and try to think what your government has told you about Pearl Harbor. Okay, so you probably are thinking it was a surprise attack out of nowhere. They just came over because they hated us and bombed the crap out of us, and then we had to join the war. I'm guessing that that's what you believe. I'm guessing that you believe that these people were just out to get us. But that's not true. Japan was not out to get America. They were fighting China. The Chinese and the Japanese have had conflict for thousands and thousands of years. That's their lands, that's their battles. Originally, the Chinese drove the Japanese to Japan. Originally, the Japanese people had control over a lot of land in China. Then the Chinese people drove them to the sea. And that was over 1,000 years ago, around 1,000 years ago or so, or even to the 1700s. That's what was going on. So then during World War II, the Chinese and the Japanese were killing one another. Well, us as Americans, we sent weapons to China. And this was before Pearl Harbor. Keep in mind, this is right before Pearl Harbor happened. So the Chinese wanted weapons from America. We gave the Chinese those weapons. Then the Chinese used those weapons and killed lots and lots of Japanese people. Now think about this in aspects of as an American. If a country like Russia gave a country like Mexico a nuclear bomb, and then Mexico dropped that, or let's say just a regular atomic bomb, or let's say 20,000 missiles. If Russia gave Mexico missiles, and then Mexico dropped those missiles on California, New York, and Boston, how do you think we would respond? Do you think we wouldn't be mad at Russia giving them arms like that? Of course we would. We would be very upset with Russia. We would be very upset with Russia for arming the Mexican people and having them drop these weapons on us. So, now we're going to flash back. So, before Pearl Harbor, before the U.S. got involved in in the World War II, there was Japan and China fighting. China asked America for weapons, and we gave them lots of planes, missiles, bombs, guns, whatever it was. We gave them a lot of weapons. Then China used those weapons to kill lots of children, women, and people, innocent civilians, in Japan. So, who is responsible for killing those women and children and adults and civilians in Japan? That would be the Chinese, and the Americans are responsible. We provided the weapons and the Chinese just pulled the trigger. Well, that's exactly how the Japanese looked at it. They said, those damn Americans want to give all these weapons to the Chinese to kill our innocent civilians. That's a big problem. So at this point, the Japanese flew over Pearl Harbor and dropped a bunch of bombs on Pearl Harbor, and their intentions were to tell you, stay out of our business. That is why the Japanese dropped the bombs on Pearl Harbor. It wasn't supposed to be some surprise attack. For another thing, we were warned about Pearl Harbor as well. There was actually warnings that Pearl Harbor was going to happen a month before it did. We could have prepared at any time, but yet we didn't want to listen. That's again our fault as Americans for not listening to the people who want to help. There are a lot of truthful, helpful Americans who are whistleblowers, and they try to speak up about what's going on, and they're completely ignored. They're completely called liars, or, oh, it doesn't matter, and then nobody wants to do anything about it, and then something bad happens. Well, that's what happened. We had a whistleblower a month before Pearl Harbor happened. We already knew that we gave missiles and something might happen. So our government was already aware that something like Pearl Harbor was about to happen, but they wanted it to happen so we could get involved into the war. So at this time, that is the true reason for Pearl Harbor for happening. That's why we got bombed. We sent weapons to China. China used them. Japan did not want us sending weapons to China. They did not want their women and children dying. So then they bombed a military base to try to get us to stop arming the Chinese. But did our government explain any of this? No. They explained it 50 years later. They released these declassified documents. There was whole books written on the subject 50 years later. When it's happening, our government says it's a surprise attack. We have no idea why they're bombing us. Oh, we got to get into the war. It's rhetoric. It's manipulations. Our government manipulates us into doing what they want for profit, and then later admits to what they really did behind the scenes. And we need to wake up to what's going on in America. Now, in my end, I've been seriously crippled by an adopted mother and pharmaceutical industries and doctors. And that makes me very angry, and it makes me pay attention to every little detail I see. When I see something on the news, I have to go and spend hours from different research. I research and spend hours researching all different news outlets, documents. Where did they get this information? Who said it? What's the background information? And we all need to start doing that. We all need to start getting the full picture. If America says Pearl Harbor was a surprise attack and the Japanese are just out to get us, well, we need to look at what we just did. Did we just send missiles? Did we just send weapons? Did we just bomb children and people? I mean, for instance, when 9/11 happened, we were already sending missiles, and we were already had men in boots in their land. We already had lots of conflicts way before that. Not just that, I want you to look up a thing called Operation Northwoods and tell me that 9/11 could not be Operation Northwoods, just one we didn't find out about. One where we had a president who was not willing to say no. Because Operation Northwoods is just one of many examples of when our government was willing to kill innocent Americans to accomplish some goal that they had in mind, mostly for profit. Most of the time, our government is willing to hurt Americans as long as there's big profits in it for Americans. And I want you to keep this in mind when you think about the apocalypse topic. I hear this a lot from people. The world's ending, the world's ending. I see it all around me, the world's ending. And then I have to explain to them that maybe it is, but it's a slow process and we can turn it around. If the world is ending, it's only because we're making it end. We can turn this around anytime we want. But I hear this a lot where people think that the apocalypse are coming. And I said that's because it already has started. The things you're seeing makes you think that. And you need to turn around your attitude and try to make a difference, because then it won't end. Yes, things are getting real bad for everybody around the world, but it does not have to be that way. Corruption, selfish behaviors, hate rhetoric, lying, manipulation, government manipulations don't have to be the case. We can turn that around if we all work together, we are all on the same page, and we all want love, harmony, and we start only wanting sufficiency. The people at the bottom should have sufficiency, and the hard-working people who do a lot deserve to keep what they've worked towards. If you got a yacht, a plane, if you got millions of dollars, that's fine. But you better be working to keep that. You better be working hard to give back to society to keep that. Meanwhile, the people who are working at the gas station, a nurse working at the hospitals, you got the police officer working down and up the streets, those people deserve to have sufficiency. They deserve to have a small apartment or a decent apartment or a house, and they just deserve to have sufficiency. There should be nobody working a full-time job who can't afford their bills. And way at the bottom, the people that do not work, do not give back, they should still have food, water, and housing. They should still have the basic necessities of staying alive. The people who are working should deserve to have sufficiency. Meanwhile, the people who are not doing anything still deserve to stay alive. And the people who are working much harder than everybody else, putting in those 100-hour weeks, working 12 hours a day, or actually I don't think it's a 100-hour week, but the people working 12 hours, 7 days a week, they deserve to make profits. They deserve to get extra money. If you're working even 60 hours, you should still not see yourself broke. Like I was making minimum wage or $10 an hour, and I was pulling 60-hour weeks during COVID. And I noticed during COVID with my transportation cost, that still wasn't enough to survive. I still wasn't able to afford the doctors. I still wasn't able to afford fruits and vegetables in my diet. Well, I still get them, but I'm talking about really good stuff like dragon fruits and avocados. I still had to buy canned fruits and canned vegetables just to skimp by. I still had a high transportation budget. I still lived in a moldy health hazard apartment, and I'm working 60-hour weeks. That is pathetic. Nobody should have to work their ass off and get compliments every week from a customer saying, wow, you're such a good employee. You deserve a raise. You should get more money. Why are you here and not in college? Well, if I'm that good, if I'm that valuable, then why am I barely alive? Why am I don't have the sufficient needs you need to get alive? Why can't I see the doctor? Why can't I pick up this expensive healthcare item? Why can't I eat the food that's healthy? If I'm doing the extra work, everybody else, normal job's 40 hours. I'm working a job and a half, and I can't even pay for childcare. Childcare has got so expensive. It's ridiculous every month. If you account your childcare on a monthly wages, like let's say you have to work 60-hour weeks. So if you're working 60-hour weeks, 12-hour days, well, you're going to need somebody to watch your children. Well, that might eat up a lot of your money right there. Or let's say that the pharmaceutical companies did something to you as a child. Let's say they put something in your food, or they convinced your mother or father to do something that they shouldn't have, and you're going to have health issues for the rest of your life. That's going to eat up your wages. Well, nobody should live without sufficiency. We all deserve sufficiency at the bottom. Meanwhile, the rich deserve to work hard to keep what they have and work hard to get what they have. And if we don't start looking at society as a whole problem and trying to fix what's going on in the last 50 years, and there's always been problems, don't get me wrong. In the 1920s, there were child workers. In the 1940s, there was World War II. There's always All the way back in time, there was wars, destruction, selfish behaviors, kings taking all the money for themselves. But we live in an interconnected society now with computers, technology, plenty of food, plenty of manufacturing. There's no reason why we can't work together with technology to give sufficiency to everybody. And this is the problem. We're not utilizing our technology and our resources to make the world a better place. We're utilizing these things for profit and for gain, and that's a big problem. If you're utilizing things like AI for profiting or gain, it's going to become an evil thing that destroys humanity. But if you're using something like AI to move in a better direction, like produce more food, help people get more proper health care. Like, I'll give you an example. When you call the doctor's office, you get robots nowadays. You get these call operators that can't understand your voice, or you can't get a hold of the right directory, and then you have to make the same phone call 5 times. Well, people with seizure disorders or people with I guess you would say learning disabilities, might have trouble speaking on a phone. I've worked with plenty of them. I worked with a Raymond that definitely couldn't speak proper on a phone. Well, if they can't speak proper on a phone, I'm sure that they can't get through these directories. I live with an 83-year-old now who can't get through the directories at all. He can't seem to get to his doctor department. He needs to talk to his primary care, but yet he has to wait for them to call him because he can't get through the directory. Well, that's a big problem. Well, AI could help. If the AI can understand complicated phrases, and if it can learn what people are doing, then it can help learn how to navigate the healthcare system and get people where they need to go. If you talk to that AI like ChatBT or Chat something, if you were to call them at your doctor's office and the AI answered, "How can I help you?" and you said, "I need to speak with my primary care," that's very simple. Then they just direct you to your primary care. But right now, as it is, I call my primary care. It rings. I get a robot. It gives me 6 options. I press option 3, and then I press option 2 after that. And then it says leave a message. I leave a message, and a week goes by, and I don't speak to my doctor. Well, that's a big problem. And we could use technology to try to help millions of people contact their doctors, contact Social Security. Also, we have a lot of people stealing Social Security. We have a lot of people using Social Security who don't need it. Meanwhile, there are millions of people who do need it and can't get it. I watched the guy who had diabetes, had his toes removed. He was working at Walgreens. Why? Because he was having trouble collecting his Social Security. The guy's missing toes and fingers. And he's limping, trying to push a cart, looking like he's about to fall down on the floor. If that's not somebody who needs Social Security, then I don't know who does. Because I've seen also one of my ex-girlfriends who went through the same fucked up system I did. She was on the street spending her Social Security on meth and crack. And now I dated her in high school when she was a sober person, but I re-met her on the streets, and she was still collecting $720 a month when she could work just fine. She could. Her only problem is that the system has systematically fucked her up in the head. She thinks that she needs all these pills and all these drugs, and she can't hold a job only because society hasn't taught her how to hold a job. She has the energy, she has the strength, and she has the body to do her job, just like I have those things. But I also have seizures, and I go out of work for 30 days to 90 days here and there. So there's a lot of problems involved that I didn't start out with, thanks to all these drugs being pumped into me from the pharmaceutical industry against my will. By the way, I did not want to take any of these drugs. I refused to take them a couple times, and they held me down and forced the drugs into my body. My mother also used to force Ipecac into my body. If I didn't take it, oh boy, you better believe there would be consequences. And she made me take extra. She even called and got permission to give me the original dose, and then poured extra into the cup just to punish me, causing permanent damage to my esophagus and stomach. We got people doing this stuff out there. Do I collect Social Security? No. I work for a living, and I work my ass off. and I support somebody else with that money. Now, yes, I probably should be on Social Security, but I also can work while collecting. And that's only during my seizures I really need it. When I'm out of work for long periods of time, when I'm bleeding from the head, when a car runs me over, runs my arm over, or something like that, yes, I would need it. But in general, if you have enough strength to walk up and down the street, lift rocks, go to home after home, understand complex tasks, these people don't need Social Security. But they're given it at childhood, and Massachusetts tries to convince parents to use this system. So a lot of parents try to make their children to be out this psycho person. They even mind wash them too. The problem is a lot of these parents try to brainwash their children into thinking that something is seriously wrong with them when really there isn't. And the worst part about it is when these people say that they're disabled and on Social Security, you got 10 people ready to jump up their hands and go, no, you don't need it. I'm tired of paying taxes for people like you. I shouldn't be paying for taxes like you. So the people who are paying the taxes into this broken system get mad at the individual who was abused and systematically fucked up. So that really messes it up. So yes, this girl could work for a living, but people twisted her mind and pumped her full of drugs so she can't work anymore. But if they just left her alone, gave her a home, and taught her just basic skills that every child should learn, she'd be working today. But instead, you had foster parents, and you had just a whole messed up situation with her. You had a messed up situation with me. I dated another girl from Cambodia. At 7 years old, she was brought here to America from Cambodia. Well, while they were in Cambodia, her parents beat her eyeball until it popped out of her skull. That way she would have an eye problem. Now her eye's permanently sideways. Not just that, they hit her in the head many times too. I mean, that is messed up to do that to a 5-year-old, 7-year-old just to get them Social Security when you get to America. That is messed up. But yet this is being done to people because of our broken system, and people realize they can profit off of it. Because until these children are adults, the parents get control of the money. They get anywhere from $700 to $1,000 a month. They get a whole extra paycheck that doesn't stop. And then these people who are children end up going through this messed up systematic abuse. And then what happens when they're 18? They're thrown into a shelter or the streets to live in the woods for the rest of their life. I've seen people who are like this in their 40s, 30s, 20s. I'm one of them, but I've learned that working is the way to go. Work, work, work. Do good, do good, do good, and move society forward. Lead by example. And yes, I have to admit that I do have disabilities. I have to face what was going on in my life. I have to face my childhood and my adulthood, and I need to move on. And that's what I do. But I also have to wake other people up to what's going on for them to fully understand me or the societal issues that need to be fixed. So that's where my book and what I'm talking about today comes in handy, because people need to understand that this is going on. You got families who have no idea that this is going on and that crazy kid in the corner is going through this madness. Nobody understands except for the people in the system. I mean, I know lots of people that went through this, lots of them. But see, you have the people at the higher up that the only thing they have to worry about is their kid getting stuck on drugs like heroin or cocaine or something like that. No, there's a lot of drugs other than those. You got benzos, you got Percocet, you got what they call, what was that one that I knew a kid who was addicted to? Um, it's like souped up gabapentin. Lyrica. You got people addicted to Lyrica. You got even people who want to buy Thorazine and Haldol, something that's notoriously a antipsychotic that I was prescribed, by the way, by doctors. And you got a whole group of people that like to buy those and get high off those. That's Thorazine and Haldol. So you have all different types of pharmaceuticals being pushed into the market that people want to buy, take, and then you also got a lot of people wanting to force them on their children. I mean, that's messed up. You shouldn't be forcing dangerous drugs onto your child. Definitely not Thorazine, Seroquel, opiates. Those should be even amphetamines, I would say, are really dangerous. If you don't have proper care and if you aren't reporting the side effects properly, then they are super dangerous to be giving to a child. If you give them too much, you could even experience an overdose. It is extremely wrong to be giving these type of heavy medications and drugs to children, because if you put a substance in your child's body, you will always have an effect. There's a cause and there's an effect. And that's the problem, is people don't always look at the cause. They only see the effect. They see the effect of the children suffering and acting up, but they don't even look at the cause. I mean, it can be as clear as day, and people do not want to tackle the pharmaceutical industries. And I'll leave you with that thought because it's running long.